The stars never felt so cold. Zave, a scout from a Zalarian fleet, stared up at the black void, dotted with distant suns and swirling nebulae. His slender fingers tightened on the controls of his stealth pod as it drifted silently toward the uncharted blue planet below. It was little more than a pinpoint of water and green, seemingly insignificant. Yet intelligence scans had flagged something unusual. Rapid technological growth, scattered electromagnetic bursts, and, most strangely, an abundance of raw, chaotic energy signatures. Human territory, his commander had said. Highly volatile species. Caution is mandatory. But Zave's pod was equipped with the latest stealth tech, far beyond anything humans could detect. At least, that was the plan. The planet's atmosphere shimmered under his pod's hull as he descended into the lower orbit. Zave's scanners zeroed in on a single target, a solitary figure moving with erratic but purposeful steps. The human wore no armor or weapons visibly, but the energy readings surrounding him were far from natural. As Zave prepared the tractor beam, a sudden surge rocked his pod. The human's eyes glinted with a fierce blue light that rippled across his skin, cracking the air with raw power. Zave blinked, then the tractor beam snapped, his pod jolting violently. Impossible, Zave muttered. Humans weren't supposed to have this kind of energy. They were primitive, fragile. Yet here stood something different, a living storm. Before Zave could react, the pod was pulled into a gravitational field unlike any he had seen, a swirling vortex that tore at metal and flesh alike. Alarms blared. He lost control, spiraling downward. Then blackness. When Zave awoke, the world was cold and metallic, humming with alien machinery. He found himself restrained, his limbs bound by energy cuffs that sizzled against his skin but never broke through. Across from him stood the figure who had caused his capture, the human, now glowing with an intense azure aura. His eyes were calm, yet something ancient burned within them. "I am called Kale," the human said, voice resonating with power. "And you, Zalarian, are far from home." Zave's mouth was dry. "Why capture me? We came in peace, to observe." Kale smiled, but it was not a friendly gesture. "Peace? Your kind brings war and death wherever they roam. But I see you are different. Useful. Useful." Zave's confusion deepened. "Your people are strong, clever, but weak in spirit." Kale's eyes flashed. "You lack what we have, raw will. You lack what I will show you." The restraints released with a hiss, but Zave did not move. Fear and awe tangled inside him. "What do you want from me?" Kale's aura pulsed. "I was taken from my world too, centuries ago. Bred as a weapon, thrown into endless wars. But I survived, and I became more than a soldier. I became a god of war. Now, I seek to forge a new order. And you, Zalarian, will either stand with me or be destroyed." Suddenly, the walls around them shifted, revealing massive holograms of galaxies, armies, and battles beyond imagination. Zave felt the weight of centuries pressed upon him. This human was no mere savage. He was a force of nature, a living weapon, and perhaps the future of war itself. "Will you fight by my side?" Kale asked. Zave hesitated, heart pounding. "Against who?" Kale's smile was cold, his eyes blazing brighter. "Against the darkness that threatens to consume us all. Against the gods of destruction who seek to enslave every star." The room trembled, and far beyond the ship, distant fleets began to mobilize, dark shapes advancing like predators hungry for conquest. Zave's mind raced. He had been abducted, but maybe this was no accident. Maybe he was meant to be here, for a war far greater than he ever imagined. And Kale was not just a man. He was a legend reborn. The ship's hull vibrated beneath their feet as it surged through the void, propelled by engines that seemed fueled not by fuel, but by sheer will. Zave followed Kale through twisting corridors of cold steel and pulsating energy. Every step echoed like a heartbeat in the silence. "Tell me," Kale said without looking back, "what is your species' greatest strength?" Zave's eyes darted around, trying to make sense of the strange environment. "Adaptability. We survive by learning, evolving." Kale nodded approvingly. "Good. Then you may yet survive this." But to do so, you must understand what you face. They reached a vast chamber where massive holograms flickered in the air, stars being torn apart, entire worlds engulfed in flames, legions of warriors clad in obsidian armor slaughtering indiscriminately. "This is the Void Rain," Kale said grimly. "A coalition of conquerors who have turned entire galaxies into tombs. They are the gods of destruction I warned you about." Zave's breath caught. The images were horrifying, but what was more terrifying was the cold efficiency of the destruction. "They will not stop until everything is ash," Kale continued. "And if you wish to live, you will fight. With me." Zave swallowed hard. "But how can I? I am no warrior like you." Kale's eyes blazed again, and the aura around him shimmered like a storm. "You are human, yes. But there is a reason they took you. You carry within you a spark they cannot understand." The room shifted, and suddenly, Zave was no longer standing on solid ground. He was in the middle of a battlefield, metal, fire, screams echoing through his mind. An army of ruthless soldiers swarmed toward him, but he felt no fear. Instead, a strange power surged through his veins, awakening something deep inside. He moved with unexpected grace and strength, dodging blows, countering with precision. The visions faded, and Zave found himself back in the chamber, breathless and wide-eyed. "That was a glimpse," Kale said softly. "A taste of what you can become." Zave's heart pounded. "But how? I don't know how to fight like this." Kale smiled, the fierce warmth of a mentor shining through the warrior's facade. "You will learn. I will teach you the ancient ways, the art of war that transcends technology and flesh." Days turned into weeks. Zave trained relentlessly under Kale's guidance, mastering combat techniques that fused mind, body, and spirit. The energy within him grew, unpredictable and wild, but Kale was patient, helping him harness it. Yet every night, Zave dreamed of the Void Rain, shadowy figures closing in, voices whispering promises of oblivion. One evening, as they sparred in the training arena, alarms blared suddenly. The ship shuddered violently. "They are here," Kale said, eyes narrowing. "The Void Rain scouts have found us." Zave's pulse quickened. This was no longer training. This was war. The command deck was a whirlwind of activity as Kale took control, issuing orders with a calm authority that commanded respect. "Prepare the defenses," he commanded. "I will lead the charge." Zave felt a surge of determination. Whatever this human was, this god of war, he had ignited something in him. The fight was coming, and he would stand by Kale's side. The void outside the ship erupted with the fire of countless warships, weapons charging, ready to unleash destruction. Kale turned to Zave. "Remember this, war is not about brute force alone. It is about will, sacrifice, and the courage to become more than you ever thought possible. Today, you fight not just for survival, but for the future." Zave nodded. "Then let them come." As the first wave of enemy ships tore through the darkness, Kale's voice rang out like thunder. "For victory, for war, for the dawn of a new legend." The void outside the ship was a storm of destruction. Zave stood at Kale's side on the command deck, the hum of weapons and shields a relentless backdrop. The Zalarian scout could feel his heart hammering, not from fear, but from a growing fire within, a strange mix of adrenaline and something more primal. "They're faster than we expected," Kale said, eyes scanning the holographic battlefield. "The Void Rain never underestimates their prey. They hunt with precision and cruelty." Suddenly, a shrill alarm pierced the cacophony. A massive enemy dreadnought emerged from the shadows, its weapons charging to unleash a devastating barrage. "Target that ship," Kale ordered, his voice calm but filled with fierce urgency. The ship shook violently as enemy fire slammed into the shields. Sparks flew, and consoles flickered erratically. Zave clenched his fists. This was no simulation. This was war. Real, brutal, and unforgiving. "Weapons locked," the gunner announced. "Ready to fire." Kale's gaze met Zave's. "Now do what you've learned. Trust yourself." Zave's training kicked in. He moved to the tactical controls, manipulating the ship's energy flow to maximize shield resilience and weapon output. It was a delicate dance of power and precision. The ship roared as it fired, plasma bolts streaking toward the enemy dreadnought. Explosions blossomed in space as shots connected, but the enemy held fast, retaliating with brutal efficiency. Kale's voice cut through the tension. "Brace for boarding. They're sending troops." Seconds later, the ship's alarms shifted to an ominous, rapid tone. "Intruders on board. Suit up," Kale commanded. Zave felt his pulse spike as the deck trembled beneath him. The training had prepared him for this. Moments like these where survival hinged on instinct and courage. They moved through narrow corridors, weapons drawn, shadows flickering with every step. The air was thick with tension. Suddenly, a burst of plasma fire erupted around a corner. Zave ducked, returning fire instinctively. The enemy soldiers were brutal, cybernetically enhanced warriors, their movements precise and deadly. But Kale fought like a force of nature. His every strike was a calculated blend of speed and strength, and energy rippled from his body, knocking enemies back like a tempest. "Follow my lead," Kale shouted. Zave found himself caught in the whirlwind of battle, adrenaline sharpening his senses. He moved faster, hit harder, and felt the wild energy within him surge. But the enemy was relentless. More kept coming, their numbers overwhelming. Amid the chaos, Zave spotted a strange device, pulsing with dark energy, being carried by one of the soldiers. "That's a war beacon," Kale yelled. "If they activate it, reinforcements will flood in. Stop it at all costs." Zave surged forward, dodging plasma blasts and melee strikes. He reached the soldier, who snarled, raising the beacon to activate. With a roar, Zave slammed his fist into the device, shattering it into sparks. The enemy howled in frustration. But the victory was short-lived. From the shadows emerged a towering figure clad in black armor, eyes glowing with malevolence. Kale's eyes narrowed. The warlord. The dark figure advanced, his presence a suffocating wave of menace. Zave felt the energy inside him pulse uncontrollably. The warlord was no ordinary foe. He was a symbol of the Void Rain's unstoppable cruelty. Kale stepped forward, his aura flaring. "This ends now." The two titans clashed, energy and steel colliding in a furious tempest. Sparks flew, and the ground shook beneath their feet. Zave watched, torn between awe and fear. This was the crucible, where legends were forged or shattered. The warlord struck with brutal force, but Kale countered with a fierce, unyielding will. For a moment, it seemed the dark warrior would overwhelm Kale. But then, with a roar that echoed across the battlefield, Kale unleashed a devastating surge of power, knocking the warlord back. Breathing heavily, Kale turned to Zave. "Now you fight. Show me the warrior you have become." Zave nodded, energy flaring through his veins. The fire within was no longer just survival, it was purpose. As the enemy regrouped, Zave raised his weapon, stepping into the chaos with newfound resolve. This was his baptism of fire. Zave's weapon hummed with energy as he charged into the thick of the fight, every instinct screaming at him to survive, to win. But something else had shifted inside him. The chaotic power Kale had helped him unlock no longer felt like a curse. It was a weapon, a fire to wield. The enemy soldiers faltered under the combined assault of Kale's godlike fury and Zave's newfound prowess. Plasma bolts sliced through the dim corridors, lighting the darkness in jagged flashes. Zave moved with a deadly grace he never imagined possible, blocking strikes, returning fire, and pushing forward. Still, the warlord lingered like a shadow on the battlefield, dark, relentless, watching and waiting. "Zave," Kale called over the din, "focus. The warlord will break us if we scatter." Zave pivoted, and together they moved like a storm, one a tempest of raw energy, the other a disciplined force of martial skill. But even as they pushed back, the ship's hull groaned. The Void Rain's reinforcements were on the way, and time was slipping away. Suddenly, a shudder rippled through the floor. The enemy detonated an explosive charge near the ship's core reactor. "Damage report." Kale barked. "Reactor integrity falling." "We have minutes before a meltdown," the engineer shouted. Kale's eyes darkened. We cannot let this ship be lost. It holds more than just us. It holds the hope of resistance. Zave's thoughts raced. The strange energy stirring inside him resonated with the ship's power. Something ancient, something connected. He stepped forward, raising his hands as blue energy crackled over his skin. "Let me try," he said, voice steady. Kale studied him, then nodded. "Do what you must." Zave closed his eyes, reaching into the chaotic energy within. He focused, willing it to merge with the ship's failing systems. The connection was violent, a storm of light and sound that nearly tore him apart. But Zave held firm. The reactor stabilized. A cheer erupted from the crew. Kale clapped him on the shoulder. "You're no mere scout anymore. You are a warrior, perhaps something more." Zave exhaled, feeling the exhaustion press down. But he couldn't let his guard down. Not yet. The warlord reappeared, blocking their path, his armor scorched but unbroken. "You have strength," the warlord growled. "But you lack resolve. Surrender, and your suffering will be brief." Kale stepped forward, eyes blazing. "We will never surrender." Zave squared his shoulders, stepping beside Kale. "We fight for freedom, not fear." The warlord lunged, and the battle resumed with savage intensity. In the heart of the storm, Zave understood something profound. This war was no longer about survival. It was about becoming legends, gods of war who would shape the fate of the stars. And he was ready. The corridor exploded in a frenzy of energy blasts and clashing steel. Kale and Zave fought side by side, a perfect storm of calculated ferocity and raw, unleashed power. The warlord was a relentless adversary, his strikes heavy and precise, each one testing their limits. Zave's body burned with exhaustion, but he refused to falter. Every movement was fueled by something beyond survival, a promise, a destiny. "You cannot win human," the warlord hissed, circling them like a vulture. "Your kind is weak." Zave's vision blurred, energy flaring uncontrollably around him. "Maybe," he gasped. "But we fight for more than strength. We fight for hope." With a cry, Zave unleashed a surge of energy that slammed into the warlord, staggering him. Kale seized the moment, striking with devastating force, sending the enemy crashing into the wall. But the battle was far from over. Suddenly, the ship trembled violently. The Void Rain's main fleet had arrived, their massive warships blotting out the stars. A booming voice echoed through the ship's speakers. "Submit or be destroyed." Kale's eyes narrowed. They underestimate the power of a single spark. He turned to Zave. "It's time." The two warriors moved to the ship's core, where ancient technology pulsed with dormant power. Kale placed his hands on the controls, chanting words lost to time, awakening the ship's true potential. The ship responded, energy surging through its veins, weapons and shields glowing brighter than ever. Zave felt the power coursing through him intensify, a symphony of might and will merging with the ancient ship's heart. Together, they would face the coming storm. The Void Rain's fleet loomed like a nightmare made real. Dozens of colossal warships encircling the ancient vessel, their black hulls bristling with weapons designed to annihilate entire worlds. Kale and Zave stood side by side on the command bridge, the hum of awakened power thrumming through every fiber of the ship. Around them, the crew prepared for the battle that would decide the fate of countless stars. Today, Kale's voice thundered, "We fight not as prey, but as gods." Zave's heart surged. The energy within him was no longer wild or chaotic. It was tempered, sharpened by fire and purpose. He felt the presence of something greater, a force forged by survival and will. The Void Rain opened fire. Blasts of concentrated energy streaked through the void, colliding with the ship's shimmering shields. The vessel groaned, but did not falter. Kale moved to the tactical console, directing the ship's weapons with the precision of a master strategist. "Target the lead dreadnought," he ordered. Plasma cannons flared, lancing out beams of pure destruction. The enemy flagship erupted in a cataclysm of fire and metal, staggering the fleet's formation. But the fight was far from over. From the shadows of space, the warlord emerged once more, boarding their ship with a legion of elite warriors. The battle inside was brutal, a dance of death and survival. Zave fought like a man possessed, energy crackling from his fists, every strike imbued with the strength of a god. Kale was a whirlwind beside him, their synergy unstoppable. Together, they tore through the enemy ranks, turning the tide of the battle. At the heart of the chaos, Zave faced the warlord again, eyes locked in a deadly dance. "This ends now," Zave declared, unleashing a final surge of energy that shattered the warlord's armor and sent him crashing to the floor. Breathing heavily, Zave extended a hand. "There's a choice, join us or be destroyed." For a moment, silence. Then the warlord nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. As the enemy fleet retreated, broken and scattered, Kale turned to Zave. "You have become more than I ever dreamed. You are the god of war they feared." Zave looked out into the starfield, endless, vast, and waiting. "No," he said softly. "We are just the beginning." The dawn of a new era had come. End of story.